I'm here with Justin today. Oh my god, what just happened?
Put my foot off the brake.
Oh. We're back at it again, and we thought we'd do a little bit of a different video today. We've never really spoke in depth about driving in Singapore. Justin does drive in Singapore because you have a work truck.
For work, yeah.
And he has to drive for work. So we didn't buy a car, but his company provides a car for him. And I guess not too many expats get to experience actually driving in Singapore because owning a car is so expensive.
Not necessary either, really. And
it's not necessary, you know, like public transport is incredible here, so you don't necessarily need one. Anyway, today we thought we'd talk about driving in Singapore, everything you need to know, and yeah, just generally what it's like to drive in Singapore. Okay, quickly, we just want to tell you about the process of buying a car in Singapore and why it's not necessarily something that like expats typically do.
Number one is Singapore is a tiny country.
Tiny. Was it half the size of London?
Half the size of London.
Half the size of London.
So if you lived in this, if you live in any city in the UK, in Australia, in anywhere,
yeah,
in a city you don't typically drive because public transport is far quicker, far easier, right?
Yeah.
Singapore the same, but imagine the whole country is like that. There's no real need to have a car. So the process of buying a car in Singapore, cars are notoriously expensive.
So expensive.
Typically about 3 times the cost
of
what you would typically pay in, say, the US, Australia, UK. Cars are expensive. So $100,000 will get you a tiny hatchback.
Yeah.
Suzuki Swift, maybe.
Whereas in the UK, you used to buy cars for
yeah, an Aston Martin for that price.
Yeah, in the UK, you used to buy cars for like
£400. $800.
But here, the minimum you're going to pay is probably like
60,000-70,000.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
So on top of that, you have to pay for insurance as well.
Oh yeah, insurance, tax, everything like that.
And then you actually only own the car
10 years.
For 10 years.
So it's like a lease. You don't own the car. So it has a resale value that you sell it back to the government for.
Yeah.
But obviously it depreciates quite heavily. So you don't, when you buy a car, if you don't want to insure it and put it on the road, you have no choice. It's that clock still ticks.
Yeah.
You only have the certificate of entitlement for up to 10 years. Another thing is the process of driving. What do you have to do to enable you to be allowed to drive in Singapore? Obviously you have to have a driver's license. If you have a driver's license, you can drive within Singapore for up to 12 months on that license. But after 12 months, you have to convert your license to a Singaporean license. That doesn't mean you lose your old license. You keep the old one, but you then have a Singaporean license as well. All that means is you go for your theory test and you have to do the theory test in Singapore. Once you pass the theory test, which is $15 for the test, $50 for the card, so what, $65, $70, you'll have a Singaporean license. Sweet. Easy.
So what's it like to drive in Singapore? What's the difference between here and the UK, do you think? Obviously,
we drive on the same side of the road.
We drive on the same side of the road.
Everything is very similar. The only negative is signage. They might have things like, if you want to take an exit, they might position the sign after the exit. I think signage placement could be improved, but other than that, it's the same. And when it comes to drivers in Singapore, it's very unforgiving. I've said it before, no one will give you an inch. So if you want to indicate to go into the next lane, the person behind will speed up to close that gap to prevent you from getting in that lane. So what you generally find yourself doing is following what they do. So now it's not tailgating, but if you're going slow, if I go fast, I leave a gap so people can come in and out. But if I'm going slow, I don't leave an inch. If you can't beat them, join them.
I think something else you'll notice when driving in Singapore is how many flashy cars there are on the roads.
Yeah.
There are a lot of expensive cars.
Maseratis, Ferraris, Lamborghinis.
Yeah.
I was reading in the news today, there's 207,000 millionaires.
207,000?
In Singapore.
Wow.
And something like, it's like the second richest country in the world. 50% of everyone in Singapore are within the top 10% of the wealthy people in the world.
Wow.
Which counts to anything over, say, $100,000 US.
Right now we're just driving through Orchard. This is the I guess, the Oxford Street of Singapore.
Yeah.
This is where all the retail shopping goes on. It's quite quiet this morning. It's Sunday morning.
Yesterday.
Very busy yesterday.
Very busy.
But yeah, I love it. I love driving down here. The architecture's amazing. Okay, ERP. Do you want to explain a little bit about what an ERP is?
ERP is like a toll. So it's like a tax to use that road. So you have a cash card in the front of your car. Similar to many countries have a similar thing. Turkey has the same thing. Australia has the same thing. So when you go through the gantry, it deducts the cash from your card.
Also, if you get taxis in Singapore, usually if you get a Grab, it will also notify you that you will be going through an ERP, so there probably will be an ERP charge as well. So the cost of the ERP will vary on the road, the timing, the day of the week.
See what I mean? He's trying to go left, no one's letting him left. No one's letting him in.
We've already got some road rage up
Guys
here.
clearly indicating to go left, no one's letting him in. There's 3 cars and they just bunched up, they sped up, bunched up.
No one lets them
No
in.
one will let him in. So he gets to the left and he will go stationary, stop everyone behind him from moving. Oh.
Another thing that's really uncommon in Singapore is roundabouts. There are so many roundabouts where I live, and I remember taking my driving test and being like, oh my god, driving like roundabouts are awful. But yeah, there's not many roundabouts in Singapore, is there?
There are some roundabouts, but not many. It's not common. $2.50 an hour.
Now when it comes to parking, they don't have it in every indoor car park, but what I love is that they have the red and green lights above the parking spaces. So if it's green, it's empty. If it's red, it's full. Just like, oh my god, it makes it so much easier to park. I know that they're slowly adopting that in the UK. Oh, here we go.
So when it comes to paying for car parks, same as ERP, so you have a cash card. It's like a chip and pin. So this one you can top up at 7-Eleven or a Nets machine, like chip and pin machine. And all it is, you top money on that, you put it into your reader, and it deducts the money from the card. Simple as that. So you can use that ERP, parking. This one is a lot easier than say in the UK, because the UK you would have to pay by coins, cash.
Oh, such a faff as well.
Yeah, nightmare. And parking in Singapore is cheap.
Some places are cheap.
Most places are cheap.
This car park isn't cheap.
£2.50, $5
For how long?
all day.
Yeah, that is really cheap.
That could be per 30 minutes in the UK.
Yeah, true.
£2.50 for 30 minutes.
So parking is affordable, but cars are not
affordable,
so
yeah.
much.
Yeah. Leaving the car park, I'll just drive up to the barrier. It will go beep 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 and tell me $5.
$5.
Easy.
By the way, you have to really excuse the state of this truck. We know that it's dusty and dirty.
It gets dusty really easy.
But
yeah.
Justin works in construction, so that's why it is a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Always.
Speed limits are relatively slow. So 60, everything in kilometers per hour. Typically about 60 kilometers an hour for a smaller road. Up to 90 kilometers on a motorway. So it's quite slow in comparison. And there's a high percentage of cars in Singapore that are either hybrid or electric. So a lot of the taxis are hybrid.
Yeah, and they're just like so quiet, aren't
So
they?
quiet, yeah.
I love it. They're just like silent. Raffles Hotel over there, one of my favourite hotels in Singapore. Another thing you'll notice in Singapore is how green the roads are. Singapore is such a green city. Another one of my favourite things about being here, there's just so much greenery everywhere. I don't think you'll ever see like as many green roads as you do in Singapore.
It's because it has the weather for it.
Yes.
All year round.
Really? Alright guys, we are going to wrap the video up here. I think we've pretty much covered everything.
Most things.
Do you guys have any other questions about driving in Singapore, or if you drive in Singapore yourself and there's things that we haven't mentioned that you want to leave in the comments below, please go ahead and do that. So I hope this video was helpful or insightful, or if you were just generally curious about what it's like to drive in Singapore. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, subscribe if you want to see more from us, and we will see you in the next one.
Adios.
Bye guys.